888-980. This is Dr. Chamberson. Call keeping you healthy without that dreaded copay. 888-539-2980 is the number to call. That's 888-539-2980. Now, in our last segment, Barbara called, and one of her question was, she had a little head injury. Should she go to urgent care versus an emergency room? And we also got an email about this, and one of the emails said was, why, when you go into an emergency room, don't they tell you that the urgent care is a block away and you can go there because it's cheaper and maybe quicker and all the rest of it? Well, it's very simple. It's a medical legal thing, really. And let me give you an example. So you go into the emergency room and you see Dr. Esperanza. And she says to you, oh, there's not much wrong with you. It's just an ankle sprain or maybe a fracture. Go around to the urgent care around the corner. They can take care of that. So you go around to the urgent care around the corner and you see Dr. X. They examine you, they do the x-ray, and they tell you you've got a sprain. They miss the fracture, right? A few months later, you've been hobbling around, your ankle's awful, you've got a lot of pain, and you're upset. You go to your regular doctor, they x-ray and they say there was a fracture and it was missed. So now you're angry. Now you're really annoyed. You say, what? I went to the emergency room and they sent me over there to this incompetent place, blah, 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 blah. So you sue everybody. You sue the first emergency room doctor, you sue the urgent care, blah, blah, and it goes on, and everybody's in a whole pile of nastiness. So that's one of the reasons. Is once they see you, they become medical legally liable. And if they don't treat you and they don't stabilize you, they can get a very heavy personal fine. Not just the emergency room, not just the institution. They themselves can get a fine. And I'm not talking about $100. I'm not talking about $1,000. I'm talking about tens of thousands of dollars they can be fined. And that was brought in because emergency room doctors were, in actual fact, dumping uninsured and poor people out into all kinds of places that couldn't take care of them, that didn't have the means to take care of them. So that's why that was brought in. So once you pass the emergency room door, once you go past that little line, boom, they are responsible. And guess what? They are not in any way whatsoever going to turn you away, because the implications are just way, 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 way too much. That's why when people tell you that there's a lot of tests done, or that there's not a lot of tests done because people are afraid of getting sued, is all bunkum. When you cross the emergency room door, they'll do way more tests than if you go into an urgent care, because their standards are just different. And that's why it's so expensive. It's kind of crazy, but there you go. That's life. Let's take one more call before we get into some more stuff. Let's talk to Dorothy in Torrance. Hi, Dorothy.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. My question was regarding the transcatheter aorta valve replacement.
Sure.
And I was curious as to the success rate on people over 90.
Over 90?
Yeah.
That's a good age. So what Dorothy is talking about is when you have an aortic valve problem, right? Either it's leaking or more commonly it's stenosed. In other words, it's blocked so the blood can't get out there. It'll cause a little systolic murmur. It can cause things like blackouts. It can put your heart into failure. All kinds of stuff can go wrong with it. Now, when I was in medical school, oh my God, 2 decades ago, most of the time we would wait till you were at a certain point. And it was a bit of an art to decide when the valve should be changed. In recent years, we've got more sophisticated. In recent years, what we're doing now is we're doing what's known as transcatheter. We put a little tube in the groin, we go up into the heart, we have a little look around with our technology, and we can fiddle with the valve. We can tweak it so that it's not as stenosed. Now, the advantage of this is obvious. It's an outpatient procedure. You're not fully anesthetized. And it buys you, if it doesn't fix the problem, it doesn't cure the problem, guess what? It buys you time. It buys you time. So you have somebody who's in their 10th decade on Earth, they're 93, 94, 95. What are you trying to achieve? Another 100 years? No, you're not. You're trying to get them better so that you can have good quality of life without having big surgery and all of its complications and all the complications of an anesthetic. So Dorothy is quite right. The success rate for this is really very good. Now, it depends what they're actually trying to achieve, and we can't get that from the call, but the success rate, I think, is well up there, is well over 90%. And if I was, not to the journey, and if I was in my 90s, I would go for transcatheter. I would not go for open heart surgery. No way, Jose. Wouldn't do it. Absolutely would not do it. And these are the kind of things that we see in my practice all the time. So you do the echo, which is a little scan. You put a probe on the person's chest. You can get a look at all the heart valves. You can look at all the heart muscle itself, and you see what's going on. And then you can decide what you're going to do. But the gals and the guys who do this kind of procedures nowadays, they're really good. And you know what they're good is? They do a lot of them. Thankfully, not everybody's doing this procedure. It's just kept in a small number of high-powered centers, and the people there are getting the experience, and they're getting good with this. And we're even doing them in people who are in their 90s and being very successful. This is the kind of stuff I like because it improves the quality of people's lives. They can walk further. They're not blacking out. They're not in heart failure. Reduces their need of medications. All of those good things. So, this is positive. This is what we do well in modern medicine. So, let me just quickly get back into this because we're getting a lot of calls. I want to take some more calls. But when a doctor sees you and they're trying to decide what medicines or what medicine to give you and what dosage, they base it on your age, your height, your weight, and they base it on your ethnicity. As I mentioned earlier, African Americans do better with some kinds of antihypertensive drugs compared to Caucasians. No question about that. But some people are wondering, what about genotype? What do your genes tell you? Are your genes telling you that some medicines will work better for you or not work at all? Years ago when we prescribed Vicodin, which is a painkiller, Vicodin is a combination of Tylenol and codeine, people would come back and say, hey doc, my pain is worse. Your medicine didn't help. It's terrible, the pain. And sometimes we would feel that we were being hustled for more pain meds. Right? But what was really going on? What was really going on was this. These patients lacked an enzyme called CYP2D6. You don't have to remember that. And when you have that problem, you can't process codeine. You might as well be taking an M&M. No pain medicine in there. You don't get, it's nothing, useless. Wow. So all those people, they weren't lying. They weren't seeking more drugs. The drug just didn't work in them. Now, a lot of these people are of Asian descent, by the way. So it's important to know that if somebody in your family has a codeine issue, that it doesn't work for them, that may apply to you. So you should be tested for this enzyme. We've looked at other areas where your genome, your DNA affects what's going on. And one of the ones I studied a lot is carbamazepine, which is an anticonvulsant drug. And they found again in people of Asian ancestry that if you took this anticonvulsant, even though it would work well for the control of your seizures, you got this skin disease called Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and your skin would be a mess. You could even die from it. So that's very useful information. We've been looking at things like antipsychotics and found that, hey, with some people, with certain genetic type, they're going to put on more weight. Other people, when they take this, guess what will happen to them? Yes. Their white cell count will go down. They get a thing called agranulocytosis. So we're all aware of this now. And I think what's going to happen in the next 10 years or so, hopefully in the next 10 years or so, we'll have an easy way to access their genotype. So when a doctor is prescribing drugs for you, she'll say, what's your genotype again? Let me just run that through. And they'll know what drugs to give you. And just as importantly, what drugs not to give you. Now, we're a bit away from that. And I've talked recently about some of these cheaper kits that are on the market. These $100 kits that you go and get your genotype done. And the FDA is against them. I'm against them. They're not yet ready for prime time. But it is the future. And it will happen. And it's going to happen soon. And the great news for all of us is that when this happens, we'll better understand what drugs you should have, and just as importantly, what drugs you should avoid. I'm going to take more of your calls when I come back. 888-539-2980 is the number to call. 888-539-2980. I'm going to talk a little bit about chewing gum when I come back. Now, is chewing gum, it's a fun little product. Can it actually do something bad to you? Well, apart from gas, that is. Because remember, when you're chewing gum, you're swallowing. I'm going to talk a little bit about gum, more of your calls, and whatever else pops up as we go through this wonderful Saturday morning. This is Dr. Chambers on Call, keeping you healthy without that dread.